We have 3 items on there for today. Actually, there's 5 items, but I'm removing items 4, senior center, and item 5, discussion regarding removal of city board members. But the other 3 items are 1, golf course study update, item 2, noise ordinance discussion, and item 3, fencing around commercial businesses. And I think, Mr. Ruber, you did have a comment, I believe, on the senior citizens.
On the senior center, I just wanted to mention that we're looking at moving forward in discussions on the senior center and seeing how we can improve the experience for our seniors. So we're looking forward to bringing that forward at a future work session for you all to discuss.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get started with the item number 1, which is golf course study update. Mr. John Waite.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the council's time and certainly appreciate the opportunity of working with the city on this wonderful project.
Okay. Yeah, just throw some.
Again, Cirrus Golf, we brought in an irrigation specialist to also assist on this project. And I want to say that, first of all, you guys, I really underbid this thing. And it shows you what happens when you make assumptions. Because I saw a 9-hole golf course, and I assumed, okay, this is a cakewalk, could do it in my sleep, very easy study, mail it in, Oh boy. And I want to say that this is probably the most fascinating study I have embarked on. There are just so many layers to this, and there's as you will hear a lot of negative things, but I also want to say there is just so many positive things there and that's what got me. And so I think the easiest way to demonstrate what I'm talking about is I'd like to talk to you about my experience on the very first day. Now, the study was supposed to start on July 5th, but I came in on the 4th, Independence Day. And get with it, Steve.
I know.
Oh, I forgot this slide, okay. When I was here before, I talked to you a little bit about mission statements. What is the mission statement for a golf course? And as we'll discover, the mission statement for here by default is it's an amenity, because that's the way it's being run. The city's taking no revenue in it, so by definition, it's just being run as an amenity. But there are other potential objectives that you could have. One of the most common is to have a sense of profitability. And that means, it should be either self-sufficient or maybe even making money for the city to support other programs. This is a common goal for a lot of municipal golf courses. The thing is that the more that profitability becomes an objective, the more the golf course needs to be run as a business as opposed to a city amenity like a park or tennis courts or swimming pool, because they're completely different environments. But there's other potential objectives, like being an icon or being an economic development tool. And it's that latter one that I really want to kind of plant the seed in, as in tourism. But again, it's currently being run as an amenity. And I'll lay it as an amenity, it's really being run as an amenity to 171 members. It's not really being run as an amenity for the city as a whole. All right, now we get into the first day. There we go. My first day, I came in here in the mid-afternoon, so I thought, well, I'm going to go over the golf course and be a secret shopper. I'm going to play the course as a customer and see what the experience was like, see what I'm getting into. So, I walk up there were just a few cars there, but I didn't see anybody on the golf course, which I found is strange, because July 4th is usually a big day in golf. Just about anywhere you go, the courses are full on July 4th. So I walked up to the front door, and the door's locked. I, was puzzled by that, but there was a sign that says, "Go around to the patio." Now, as I'm talking to you, I want you to put yourself in my position but not just my position. Anybody who's never played this golf course, i.e. like a visitor to the city, they're coming here and the first thing they see is a sign that says, this door is locked, go around to the back entrance. Okay? We get into the back entrance and I go to the room that looks like it should be the pro shop. But it's not, there's nobody there. There's no merchandise, there's nothing there. And so then I hear noises and I see, oh, there's a bar area, so I go into the bar. That's a nice bar. And there's a group of people in there, they're having a good time, all's good. But I walk up to the person at the counter and says, you know, is the golf course open? Oh yeah, it's open. I didn't see any carts out there, can I get a cart? She says, oh no, we don't have carts today. Okay, well, you know, I can't play golf with a golf cart. I'm physically not capable of doing that anymore. That's why I'm sitting instead of standing, so forgive me. So I found that puzzling, but at any rate. And then I asked her, well, how much is the green fees? And she looked at it and she kind of scrunched up and said, I think it's either $3 or $5, I don't remember. I'm thinking to myself, you're paying $5 to play it? Wow, I can see why there may be some issues here. Okay. And then I look at the golf course and you can see the green, the number 9 green there in the upper right-hand corner. And it just looked like crap. You know, it's not a course I would ever want to play. And that's the first thing you see is that 9th green right out the front door, or the back door. And so I said, oh my God, this is going to take 5 minutes to write this report. And I was thinking, what have I got myself into? So I left the golf course and I said, okay, well, I'm going to go drive, I couldn't tour the golf course because there was no car. So then I decided to tour the city. And this is when my whole attitude just completely changed. Because I want to tell you, I immediately fell in love with this city. It is, and I want to say this council, the city government, you guys have done a fantastic job. But I see this fantastic downtown area. I see all the art in the city. And I can see that this is a city that's going places. This is a city that's got a bright future ahead of it. And this golf course should be a part of that, not a part of the past. And so I became enthralled. And this is where, you know, my whole attitude did a 180. All right, so the first thing, talk a little bit, we did a demand analysis using the National Golf Foundation, who's kind of the main authority in the golf industry. And they do a national survey every year where they survey the general population to help them determine who's golfers, who's not golfers, and being able to extract from that the ability to project for any given area how many golfers there are and how many rounds of golf can be produced. The bottom line is that I divided our market area into 3 sections. I call it the immediate area, which is a 10-mile radius. That's usually where 90% of your play would come from in a normal facility. Then the local area is a 20-mile radius, and then the regional area is a 50-mile radius. You're not likely to get many golfers outside that 50-mile radius. And it came up with the fact that there's a rounds potential of only 7,000 rounds coming from basically the city, okay? And there's only 12,000 rounds in the entire 20-mile radius. But that doesn't count I-25. You have, 17,000 cars traveling by this place every day. And we already know that this town is becoming more and more of a touristic center, which is something I get real excited about. And so I tried to create a local tourist demand analysis. And unfortunately, we ran into some stumbling blocks because there's no local authority that tracks your occupancy rate for your hotel. So I had, which I want to encourage the city to do, I really do, because that is a really key information from economic development and all sorts of things. But you have 580 hotel rooms, and I called a few places, and basically your occupancy rate's about 80%. You know, we can assume there's probably about 1.25 adults per room. So you calculate the number of overnight visitors. I throw in the statistics from the Airbnb and Vrbo rooms I could find online, and estimated there. Bottom line, we get about 221,000 overnight visitors that are staying in Trinidad every year. And if we conservatively take an 8% participation rate, because your tourists tend to be a little higher demographics than, you know, the population at large, so they tend to have a greater percentage of golfers than the local population would. So we can conservatively estimate there's about 18,000, give or take, golfers that are currently, right now, staying overnight in Trinidad. And then if we say that they just play one round every 4 days, or 25% of the time, we can calculate that there's about 4,500 rounds potential from the golfers that are already staying in the city. Now keep in mind, none of these people are coming here to play Trinidad golf course. Let me tell you, nobody's coming to play here for that. What we can only hope is that we can get some of those who are coming here to maybe play the golf course. And I can also tell you, you're getting very few, just from my own experience and talking to the staff and people like that. You are not getting much of that at all. Okay, next slide. But the bottom line is there's 11,500. If you add the 10-mile radius to the local tourists, you got about a potential 1,500 rounds just from the immediate area. That doesn't count anybody living outside 10 miles. There's only 2 golf courses in the entire region besides Trinidad, Raton and Walsenburg. And both of them are almost copies of Trinidad. They're both 9-hole municipal golf courses. They're mostly plain Jane courses. Raton may be a little bit better than the other 2 in terms of layout. But both of them have some competitive advantages. They both have a grill, they both have driving ranges, and they both have alternative revenue sources. Like Raton has simulators, Walsenburg has a little miniature golf course in front of it. So they are doing more with what they have than we are. I wasn't able to get performance information, but I can tell you they're probably doing a comparable amount of business than we are. Maybe Raton may be doing a little bit better because of the grill. On the other hand, Trinidad has some advantages. First of all, you've got unbeatable access. There are very few courses in the country where you can get off the interstate and you're right at the golf course. We have that at Trinidad. And you are one of the most scenic golf courses I've ever seen. The golf course isn't scenic, but the surroundings are incredibly beautiful. All right, next slide. Okay. But basically, you know, the competition isn't that to worry about. The golf course layout, you know, if I were to describe it, I would say you've got a C- layout on an A or to A+ site, because the site is incredible. The golf course isn't. You know, if you look at the layout on the upper right-hand corner, you can see every single hole is a straight arrow. There's no dog legs, there's no water holes. You've got 10 bunkers in the entire course, 4 of them are on one hole. So there's not a lot of challenge there. There's not a lot of variation, which golfers like to see variety on a golf course. There's not a lot of that here. So it's kind of a plain Jane layout. Nothing wrong with that, it's just that's the way it is. You do not have a functional driving range. I'll talk about that a little bit more. Just like Walsenburg and Raton, Trinidad has 2 sets of tees, so you can mimic an 18-hole experience, and because the second set of tees is in a different location than the first set of tees. But you know, there are 2 other things that really stand out about it. and that is we would love to be able to stretch this course. From the back tee, you're measuring 6,160 yards, which is a distance that most male golfers would play from. But your low handicap golfers would not. You know, low handicap golfers, your better golfers, prefer playing from 6,500 or more, you know, for the challenge. So we're losing market share there. But the biggest thing is the forward tees. Your forward tees are measuring at 5,387 yards. Well, women hit the ball about 70 to 75% as far as men. Now, men like to play from 6,150. If you do the math, you'd see that you're asking women to play the equivalent of a 7,600 yard course. There are very few men outside the PGA Tour that like to play a 7,600 yard course. I'll tell you, that's just way, way too long. You know, it's just nobody likes to play golf and get beat up all the time, every time they play. But it has other consequences. Not only making it extremely difficult for women, but because they're playing from 7,600 yards, they're going to take a lot longer to play, right? They're playing an extra 20% further. So they're going to take 20% more strokes. That slows down not just them, but the entire course behind them. It's speed of a train is moving at the speed of the slowest car. So that's one of the reasons why Trinidad gets very, very little play from women. Okay. And there's also several blind shots. You know, and I'm not going to go into detail on all these slides because we don't have time. But you know, you'll have it so you can review it. Trees are a big issue, and you know, not only do you have a lot of dead trees, but you have a lot of trees that are significantly impacting play. You know, that there's a couple of holes where you have a very narrow gap between the trees to get your drive through. And, you know, since most of your players are going to be higher handicap players, you know, you're making it overly difficult for a lot of players. But I want to draw your attention to the middle slide there, middle picture. And if you look at that picture, you wonder, what am I showing you? What I'm showing you is a par 3 hole. And this is number 16, which is this number 7, the back tee. And you're asked, where am I hitting it? And that's a great question, because it took me a few minutes to discover where you hit it. If you look really, really close, and I brought my wife here, and she posed the same question, but if you look way down there, you can see a little flag. That's it. You don't see any green. You just have to find that flag and hope that there's a green around it, and you know, use your judgment as to how far away that thing is, and hit it. So that is about the most unfair hole I've ever seen in my life. And I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've done well over 100 big golf course studies like this, and I've probably seen well over several thousand golf courses as part of my job. So when I say this is probably the most unfair hole, that's saying quite a bit. On the other hand, if you look at the upper right-hand corner, you see what makes you get excited, and it is just the beauty that surrounds this course is just awesome. And the number 3 tee here, you know, you get an experience of that beauty. You know, the greens, you know, I already mentioned they're in horrible shape. Now, you do actually have what they call a driving range here, but it's cloaked. You know, it's like a Romulan fighter. It's hidden in the trees. You'd have to know it's there to use it. But not only do you have to know it's there, you have to bring your own balls and shag them yourself, because it's not a part of the operating golf course. They do maintain a tee. They've got holes that you can aim at. It's not long enough. You can only use irons on it, and the course gets no money for it. So basically, it's a practice area for members. That's all it is, because nobody outside members would have any idea that that thing is even there. But, you know, and that's, on the other side, this is the corporate pole that has the 4 greens. And I had to put that ball, the lower shot in there to remind you that when I was here last time,
Yeah.
I kind of hailed out, let's just put it that way. So recommendations, new 4 Ts, remove the impact of the trees, so you gotta remove some things, fix the greens. But we'll get more into this. I really want you to consider thinking about blowing this course up and creating a real golf course that's going to do a lot more for you. Let's turn our attention to the clubhouse. This clubhouse is just gorgeous. It's historic. It was designed by Rapp Brothers. It's beautiful. You got 2 beautiful patios. You got the wood accents inside. It's a wonderful clubhouse. Good banquet space. You have a huge kitchen. It's a wonderful, well-equipped kitchen. It's not being used. Not being used at all. Okay, next one. Here are some of the issues that we found in the clubhouse. You've got a nice bar, but it's not ADA compliant. You've got very little space to put carts, what we call staging. You know, as an operator, you put golf carts out before play begins, so they're there for players to take. But unfortunately, you have very limited space to do it. And behind that little overhang up here is what used to be the Pro Shop building. It's a separate building from the clubhouse, and it's just being used for storage. So we could potentially get rid of that and add more space there. Here's where we're going to beat up, in a moment, don't worry, I'm a fair share beater upper. We're going to be beating up the association here in a minute. But here we have to beat up the city, because the city is responsible for maintaining this building, and they're not doing it. There have been numerous break-ins over the last 5-6 years, and part of the break-ins have included breaking a window, which is now covered up, damaging doors, which you can see there's a pane missing, and there's other damages around the clubhouse. Folks, this has been like this for years. This isn't something that happened recently, but 3 years, 5 years ago, these various damages occurred. And the city's supposed to fix them up, they haven't. The security system is, my understanding right now, it's not functional. And even when it was functional, it was inadequate. There are no outside cameras. There's only one inside camera. So it's far short of what it needs to be to protect the clubhouse and the people that do. Next one. My recommendations on this, the bar is over here to the right. There's the kitchen behind it. I want to take out this wall right here and extend, you can see the edge of the bar, extend the bar over here. Now that does a couple of things. One, it gives you a lot more bar area. It hides the kitchen, so that you're not feeling like the customers can walk right back into your kitchen, which you don't want. You've got these snack areas, which are just asking for a grab and go situation. So you can move those things out of temptation. But most importantly, right now, one of the biggest issues we found there is that there's only one person in the clubhouse most of the time from a staff standpoint. And that person is behind the bar. From the bar, you have no view of the golf course. So how can you monitor play at the golf course if you're behind a bar with no window to see the golf course? So people can just drive up and walk out and play golf, you'd never know it.
More importantly, as we'll talk about, the members can go out and play and never be charged for it, because the members, not only do they pay a membership fee, they are supposed to pay a per round fee of $5 to play the golf course. That's where that $5 gets from, that they really wanted to charge me. You have 2 walk-in freezers, which is great, but neither of them work. Not so great. Again, city responsibility. All right, next one. Maintenance building, we got some significant issues. Is Guido here? There you are. Hey, Guido. Yay. Guido does a fantastic job. But we've had security issues there, and if, does the security system currently work, Guido, or is it just, no, it doesn't even work? Okay, that's what I thought. And at the very least, it should also have cameras, which you have none out there. But here are the 2 biggest areas, and these are significant concerns from my point, because there's no way OSHA would allow this. The maintenance building has no restrooms. Think about that for a minute. The closest restroom is probably, 500 yards away, quarter mile or something. So they have to leave work or, whatever they're doing and travel that far just to use the restroom and then go back. But even, that's a major inconvenience. But the real liability is you have no emergency wash area, which is required when you're dealing with chemicals, and you don't have one. So these things need immediate attention. You have 4 cart barns. Only one of them is for the city. The other 3 are private carts, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Now, recommendations, obviously, you gotta add a restroom, you gotta add an emergency washroom, you gotta add a security system. Those things are kind of no-brainers. Needs to happen. Again, these are city responsibilities. Performance. The city owns the golf course, as you all know. You own the buildings, you own the assets. But the operations is being leased out to a nonprofit organization, which has a long name, but we'll just call it the Trinidad Golf Association for, that's what they call themselves. The city, very important, you get not a penny from this golf course, other than what you can get from sales tax, that's it. Yet you are providing at least $180,000 a year in utilities free of charge to the golf course. Most of that's water. You're paying for about, because unbelievably, you're using potable water on that golf course, drinking water. And that's expensive, especially when you're talking about millions of gallons, which what a golf course sucks up. And so that's costing you about $155,000 equivalent just from water. And then you add in electricity and gas, and you're going to be up there around $180,000 in utilities every year you're spending. Plus your maintenance on the clubhouse that you're supposed to be spending. And so you're paying out, that's why I'm saying it's an amenity. There's nothing wrong with that from a standpoint, as long as you understand this is what you're doing. Okay, next one. The Trinidad Golf Association is a nonprofit organization. It's run by a board of directors. And by the way, no one could tell me who makes up the Trinidad Golf Association. I didn't see any paperwork to tell me. It's just assumed that it's the members, but I don't really know that legally if that's the case or not. All we do know is that the members of the club elect the board of directors. So the organization that is running this golf course is being effectively run by its members. Now I want you to let that sink in for a minute. You're basically letting a private club run this municipal golf course for the benefit of its members. Again, I've done over 100 studies. I've probably worked with or visited probably 500 or more municipal golf courses. I've never seen this kind of setup. And then I come here and I find 2, because we're talking about the same thing. So, you know, obviously this is something different in this part of the world, but it, you know, just logically doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And we'll get into some of the issues that we're seeing. Next one. One of the big issues is financial performance. Now, one might ask, why am I sticking my nose into TGA's business? And that's a good question. Because, you know, the city gets no money from the golf course. But I was asked to. So, since I was asked to do it, I did. And I will say this, I should have started off the meeting by saying this. TGA and the staff at the golf course, they were fantastic to work with. I couldn't ask for any more. They did everything I asked for. They were very cooperative, they're very friendly, no arguments, no problems there. But the information that I got from them was different. We'll start with the P&L that they gave me. Again, this is information they gave me. I have no way of verifying any of this. And what you see on this slide is the income portion of the profit and loss. I made some adjustments because in 2022, you had revenue coming in for 2023 because they offered an incentive for the members to prepay their dues. So I took that out because that's really 2023 income. And in 2021, you had $84,000 of income in loan forgiveness, a PPL loan that was forgiven. So they counted that as income in 2021, but since that wasn't really golf course related, I took that out. So this is after the adjustments. And you can see, good news. We made $9,000 more in revenue in 2022 than in 2021. The biggest benefit was we did a lot more tournaments in 2022, so all that's good. Next one. Cost of sales. This is basic accounting, accounting 101. You need cost of sales. TGA doesn't have cost of sales. They had no line item for cost of sales. Instead, everything was expensed. So I had to go and pull out those expenses that I would consider cost of sales. And it is possible that there are some non-cost of sales in these line items, but I was told that if there are, there would be supplies, which would be minimal anyway. So that's one issue. When I did parse out the cost of sales, we discovered that they're actually very high from an operation standpoint. You have a cost of sales for alcohol, beer, and wine of 50%. Let me tell you, in a restaurant business, and you're effectively restaurant and bar, alcohol's your highest margin. You get the best margin in alcohol sales. It should be around 20%. You've got 50%. So there's a problem there. The food was, for every dollar you're taking in food, you're spending $1.26. Now, you can't make that up in volume. Just saying, okay? But fortunately, you do almost no food sales, so it's not that big of a deal. All right, next one. Next one. There we go. Okay, expenses. I could go spend a long time in talking about how you should set up expenses, and let's just say they really weren't categorized the way you would like to see them in the golf industry. Yeah, that's just my bias in it. But the bottom line is that net operating income showed a loss of $22,000 in 2021, but only $2,000 in 2022. So that's a big improvement, which we love to see. Unfortunately, I have good reason to question that. Next slide. Up in the upper right-hand corner, and I can show it to you folks if you want to see it. This is the report, and that's photocopied right off the report. The rounds, when I asked to see, how many rounds do you do? That is what they gave me. And when I saw it, I nearly flipped, oh my God, you did 18,000 rounds last year? And 17,000 rounds, I mean, my God. When I was there as deserted, I was thinking you probably did, less than half that. But 18,000, well, that's fantastic. But it's not true. Because the next thing I did is I went to the course and had them print out the, what we call an item sales report. This is directly from the point of sale, and it shows every transaction that was done over the course of the year, and it's categorized. So from that, we can generate what the actual number of rounds were. And the actual number of rounds was 8,555 in 2021 and 8,312 in 2022. So if you remember back in the P&L, it was showing an increase. Up here, it was showing an increase in rounds. No, rounds went down. And where the rounds really went down was in public play. Members' rounds was pretty much even. They didn't vary very much at all. In fact, I went back to 2017, and again, member rounds hadn't changed much from 2017. The public play has changed dramatically. And then when I looked in 2023, year-to-date from July 13th, and we see that public play has declined nearly 18% from the previous year, from 2022 to this year. And then I'll go back to that slide where you saw the condition of the greens. That's one of the big reasons why that happened. We also had a big decline in 2023 in tournament revenue over 2022. Okay, next one. When we look at the income, we did see some difference. There was about a $3,000 difference from the P&L, from the POS. But here's the thing, folks. When you're doing accounting, you're supposed to do something called rectifying. And you're supposed to have the numbers coming from the POS should be agreeing with your numbers coming from the P&L. They should be the same. If you're showing an income of $355,000 in the POS, that should be the income from in the P&L. Now, there may be adjustments to that, but that should be the raw number that you're working from. But here, it clearly isn't. But when we look at it, we see, again, public green fees down, tournament revenue down, private card storage went up, and cart fees went down. Okay, next one. So, the P&L's not being rectified, but here's another thing. The member rounds, what was showing, I don't believe, not by a long shot. Because when you take the number of rounds from the POS, which again is coming from the members paying their green fee, $5 a round, we come up with an average of 34 rounds per member. I don't know a club in the country that averages 34 a member, unless they have a 1-month playing season. I expect double that, especially with a course that has private carts, and most of the members have private carts. They probably average, with a private cart, they probably average double that, 75 to 80 rounds a year. The overall membership should be probably averaging around 60 or more rounds a year. So you're averaging 34. So what's that tell me? Folks, members out there, there's a lot of people of you who are not paying your green fees. Why? One of the reasons is, as we'll get into, the course doesn't open till 8 a.m. Private carts, they get out there and they're playing before 8. And do they come in and say, oh, I played a round before you opened and here's my $5? But here's another problem. We have a category called new members. Now, new members are defined as people who are new to the club or old members who were inactive for 2 years. If you've been inactive for 2 years, you get to pay half 50% off your next year's dues. But that's only supposed to be 1 year. The first, you get 1 year bonus. We had 43 new members in 2022. Anyone believe that? I don't. Not for an instant. Not when the total membership has only changed by 1 member over the years. So, what's happening is for some reason, these people, a lot of them, are getting their new member discount for multiple years. I don't know how many, but it's happening. Now, overall membership has dropped dramatically. At one time, we had, I think, 400 members. In the not too distant past, we're down to, I think, 171, 141. But as we'll talk about, that's really not a big a concern as you might think it is. The big concern is a big drop in public play. Because that's where you really should be making money, is on the public. We also had an issue with how in heck did the member cart fee jump 24%, but their rounds only went up by 0.3%. There's something wrong there too, but that's another story. Recommendations, this is for TGA, doesn't affect the city, but I would tell them to import the data directly from the point of sale system, which both you're using QuickBooks. QuickBooks can import directly from the Golf Now data that you're getting from the POS. Why are you hand transcribing it? That only leads to errors. And I would also inform the board of directors, I would audit your darn books. I did not have access, did not ask for access to your bank records, but there should be a reconciliation between what you're showing as income and what's in the bank deposits. I would also look at your expense items for the same reason. There is definitely something amiss in how the accounting is being held up. And I would ask, if I were a member, for some accountability there. Next. It was very clear from the first time I walked in that door that this is a private club that's taking daily fee play, not a municipal golf operation. And this impacts every phase of operations. And the membership self-interest is, it's just immediately obvious everywhere you look when you're looking at the operation, which is a highly unusual situation for a municipal golf course. The other thing that sticks out is there's a complete lack of expertise. You know, the outside of Guido, there really isn't anybody there that has any experience in running a golf course or golf operations, which is why you're kind of in this mess. There's nobody there that knows what they should be doing. Money. Every time I talk to a staff member or even outside member, the members of the club, I was always given this big 5-letter word, money. Money's the problem. This is why we're having trouble. This is why Guido hasn't gotten a raise in 13 years. This is why we're running golf carts that are 13 years old, why the maintenance equipment is well past its age limit. This is why those greens weren't fixed. This was Winterkill that did this. This wasn't malpractice on the maintenance staff crew. It was Winterkill, common thing. But it should be fixed, but it requires money to do it because it needs resodding or even reseeding. Money. Yet here's the catch. The golf course has some money. They had, when I was here, $26,000 in the bank. They had another $62,000 in a CD that was being used as security for a line of credit that is not being used. So it's not a question of them not having the money, it's a question of them not wanting to spend the money. They're holding it in reserve for, we're losing money, so we need to hold this in reserve for future losses. But that's kind of backwards thinking. Because if you don't do something to fix the losses, you're sooner or later going to run out of money, right? So my suggestion would be, why not invest some of that money, not all of it, but invest some of that money to fix some of those problems, so maybe you don't have the losses. Next one. operating issues. The first tee time is 8 a.m. Now, this may come as a shock to you folks, but in the summer, it gets hot. And this may also be a shock to you. Golfers don't like playing when it's real hot, it gets messy. So golfers in the summer want to play early, right? That's just logic. Early is 6:30 or 7 in the golf business, not 8. So you're losing a lot of business. If we just look at public play, forget the members for a minute, you could be generating $1,400 or more per day from public play if we just moved up the tee time an hour. But we're also losing it in the evenings. The clubhouse is closing at 7 p.m. Well, there's another hour and a half of daylight in peak of summer, which is that's enough to play 9 holes. You're closed. And that has other consequences. There's nobody on duty if there's a case of an emergency, so that's kind of a liability problem, which I guarantee you the city would get involved in, even though you're not operating the course. You're also losing money from the food and beverage revenue. The one bright spot of this operation is the food and beverage. And let's amend that. Take the food out of that. The beverage part. That bar is fantastic, right? You're drinking more beer at this club than I've ever seen at any other club. Congrats. You've really earned it. That is fantastic. But we don't want to be a bar that has a golf course. We need to be a golf course that has a wonderful bar. So we also have, and this is true, there's no staff person to put away carts if they aren't in by 7 o'clock, because that staff person is gone. So what did I see? I came up, I saw somebody strange putting away a golf cart and locking up. Just pardon me asking, who are you? Oh, I'm a member. And you're putting away, oh yeah, that happens all the time. X asked me to lock up for him. I have no problem doing that. So we have members that are being responsible for putting away the golf carts at night. You can ask yourself if that's a good situation or not. Next one. The biggest issue, though, is one thing I talked about. You only have one staff member. And here's where it really comes into play. Remember I talked to you about the small staging areas for carts? So after 4 or 5 people take carts, there's no carts. So what happens? That one staff member who's in the clubhouse has to go 100 yards over to the cart barn and bring up a cart or 2 or 3 for them to use. What does that mean? That means they are leaving that clubhouse completely unattended for up to 10 minutes or more, with or without customers. Either way, it's bad. But that's where that sign, if the course is locked, come around to the back door. You come in the back door and you look around, there's nobody there to help you, right? So a lot of people, they're not going to stick around to find out where the heck is the person. And I saw this several times. This isn't just one time, every time I came into the clubhouse, just about, I had this experience. And it also means there's no monitoring the golf course. As we talked about, you can't see the golf course from the bar. And here's another thing. The one staff person's behind the bar, so what are they spending most of their time doing? Because the beverage side is doing really good. Well, what do bartenders make when they're tending bar? They make lots of tips, right? Good for them. They deserve it. They earn it. But ask yourself this: if you're a human and you make more money tending bar than you do handling golfers who are notorious for not tipping, who are you going to pay attention to, right? But ask yourself this question: if you're the city and you own a golf course that's going to cost $9 million to replace versus a bar that could cost a few $100,000 to replace, where would you like to see that person paying attention to? This is an issue. It's an easy issue to solve. You need 2 people. We need to, if you remember, I showed you an earlier slide, there is a pro shop area in that clubhouse. It's just not being used. It's got a counter, it's even got a POS for it, but it needs to be manned. And we don't have anybody manning it. It has a nice view of the golf course. You can see the first tee from that pro shop. So you solve all these problems if you just staff what is already there. Plus, it has an area for merchandise where you could, put in merchandise and make more money. But we're not doing it. Back to that money issue. We only have 1 person monitoring the course. On the positive side, the staff is great. I mean, they're from a customer service, they're very friendly and all of that stuff, which is good. But it's how it's being set up that it's bad. And again, I want you to think like you're a tourist. And you're walking into a building, and you first come across a sign that says, door is locked and door is locked. You have to go around to the back. And then you go around to the back, and where the pro shop is, there's nobody there. And so you go into the bar like I did that first day, and there's a bar, it's busy, and it's nice. But you have to stand and wait and wait and wait for the bartender to recognize you because they're out talking it up with their customers and earning tips and doing that stuff, which bartenders should do. But the golfer is being ignored. And then when they are being serviced, at least with 1 staff member, they don't know anything about the golf course. They don't even know what to charge. And they didn't want to bring up carts that day, so they just said, hey, no carts today. And that, by the way, is another consequence of closing early. It's something that I really hate. Because they want the carts in before they leave, so they don't let carts out after 2 p.m. So think about that. That's half the day you're without carts. You can't rent a cart. And a lot of golfers out there like me who will not play unless they can have a cart. And that's all a consequence of them making the closing at 7 p.m. Okay. As I keep hammering, this whole operation is oriented towards the members, right? Tourists are being totally neglected. People that are not used to the club is being neglected. We also find that there are members that are clearly taking advantage. They're playing without paying, probably 50% of the time, or close to it. The dues and storage fees that they are paying are well below the industry average. And while I don't have any verification of this, I can almost guarantee you that this is happening, that members will be taking guests along in their private cart, and those guests aren't paying either. So you're losing even more revenue. Of course, we don't have starters or rangers to monitor the course, but you're not that busy, so that's not a big deal. First recommendation is hire a professional experienced manager. There's no reason TGA can't continue managing this, but I would strongly recommend that they hire probably a PGA pro or somebody who has the experience of running a golf course. We need to move up the tee time in the summer to 7 a.m. We need to have staff reporting to duty by no later than 6:30 to open up. We need to have 2 people on duty at all times, keep the clubhouse open, blah, 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 and establish that pro shop area. Next. Cart operation. Talked about the age, talked about the small thing, but here again, I'm going to hammer. This is unbelievable to me. I've never seen this happen. The members have keys to the storage barn. So any member can go in to the private cart storage barn, and once inside, they have access to everybody's possessions within that building. So that's a big security risk, right? You know, you got expensive clubs. Ooh, I'm missing a 7-iron. Okay. Ooh, he's got a new Odyssey putter. Okay. I don't know if that's ever happened, but it's certainly possible. But here's the bigger problem. Because they have a key, they can take their cart out anytime they want to. That means they can go out at 6 a.m. and play the course and not pay their fees. That means they can take the cart out at 7 p.m. and play the course and not pay the fees. That means, of course, they can play during the day because there's nobody monitoring the course and not pay their fees. But it also means that, you know, Mr. Grandson or granddaughter happens to borrow those cart keys and they could go out at night with that golf cart and cause some damage. I don't know, again, it may never have happened. I don't know. But the risk is there, right? It's just a bad, bad policy. That cart barn should be locked by staff, and they are the ones that need to have the key to open that thing and to close that thing. I can't emphasize that enough. Private cart people are not paying a separate storage fee or trail fee. Now, again, this is unusual. Now, they call it a bundled in with their storage fee, but when you look at their bundled rate, it's still well below what even Raton is charging for their private cart members, who also pay a trail fee. So it's just, it's ridiculous how much they're getting away with. Now, to their credit, TGA has raised their rates quite a bit this last year, but even with the new rates, we're still well below industry average. You know, the cart fleet needs to be replaced, it's well past, lock the cart bound, consider hiring cart attendants. Okay, next one. Food and beverage, strongest part, wow, you know, you're averaging like $6.25 on beer sales alone per round. That's unbelievable, fantastic. But we still have very high cost of sales. But the one thing I heard over and over and over, besides no money, was we want a grill, we want a restaurant, we want a grill. Guys, with the amount of food and beverage revenue that pub is already, the bar is already generating just from beer and alcohol sales, that alone justifies a grill. For one thing, we may have a liability issue because most bars have a requirement that X percentage of that sales needs to come from food. And we're nowhere near that. You're at like 5% or less. So, you know, the grill really should be open. And to do that, you need to hire an experienced food and beverage manager to operate it. If it were me, I'd create a sports bar thing. You've got one TV, I'd add a bunch more TVs. I'd expand the bar. Cost of sales, there are two things you could do immediately that would drop your cost of sales. Draft beer, which costs a fraction of what canned and bottled beer costs. And you've got a fountain for sodas. You're just not using it. You know, instead, it's more convenient for the bartender to hand out cans and bottles than it is for them to take the time to load up a cup of ice and squeeze it. But the cost of sales is like tenfold less. So it's significant. All right, next. Merchandise sales are non-existent. They're averaging like 40 cents a round. There's no real display area. And folks, you know, I can't emphasize this enough. We're a touristy town. Tourists love to buy logo merchandise when they play golf. But we're not attracting any tourists anyway, so it's not a big problem. But if we do some things that we like to do there, that's one of the things we need to do. We need to have a display area, and we need to bring in logo shirts and things like that. Membership, steadily decreasing. It has been given a strong priority by the members because they're running the thing. And, you know, they are concerned because members are aging out and there's no new people to come forward to take their place. Why? Because we haven't been recruiting people to play golf. We've been making it as difficult as possible for people to come and play for all the reasons that I've been telling you. But here's the thing. You're right at, you know, if I were starting operations at a daily fee course, I think you're at 141 members, 150, you're right in the sweet spot. You really don't want a lot of members because they're taking away tee times that you could get much higher revenue out of, especially on weekends, high demand times. And as we'll talk about a little bit, members are paying a fraction even with their $5 when you average out their dues and stuff. They're paying like less than half of what a daily fee player would be paying on average. So, again, and we also want to make sure that every round is being recorded through the POS, even if it's a non-revenue round. Next. Marketing, what marketing? I could say go on, but I have to talk about a few things. The marketing you have basically consists of a billboard and a website. Yes, did you know that? You have a billboard for the golf course? You know. The reason you may not know that is because you can't see the darn thing. It's located up on a hill. It can only be seen if you're traveling southbound on I-25, but it's not within a driver's view. You have to be looking up and to the right to see it. And when you do see it, it's covered. So it's really like, what is this sign doing? And as you can see, it's not really a very attractive sign in the first place. Where's mine?
It's
I take tips. So there is, we'd have to talk to the DOT, there may be billboard restrictions, but the logical place to put that billboard is on behind the 5th green, which is right at the exit sign. We'll show you in a second. The website, there's a thing called searchability where you're looking to, you only find that website if you're looking specifically for it. It's not the greatest thing. But what cracks me up is when you go to the scorecard, you get this picture of the scorecard inside of a trash can that's upside down. So, that's, okay, I can't make these things up. The average for the industry is to devote 3% of your revenue to marketing. There is no expense item that is more highly correlated with performance than marketing. And when I plot it, and I've done this many times with operations, it's like a direct one-on-one thing. The more they spend, the more money they're making in proportionately. And if it's not doing that, you've got a very bad marketing program in the first place. Yet when money gets tight, what's the first expense that they cut? People cut marketing. The one expense that makes them money, they cut. That doesn't make sense, never does. The second thing they do is cut maintenance charges, which is the second most important expense. So anyway, there's a lot of things that you can do to improve marketing, and I list some of those. All right, next one. Fees. I put this sign up because this is a sign in the pro shop, and it just shows the way management thinks. What's the top thing listed on it? It's what the members pay. Now, members know what they're paying. It's the public that wants to know what they're paying, but they're get second-class status here. It's just, it's a little thing, but it shows, it speaks a lot, All right, I don't really have a lot of problems with the current fee structure. It's competitive with the other courses in the area. I would have a lot of issues if we improved the product, but given the product that it currently is, the fees don't really bother me too much. I do think we're a little low on the cart fee. We can increase it by $1 and not be hurt. It's really the membership fees that are really lacking. And I talked about some things that we can do to modify that to make it more realistic. Course maintenance. Take him out. We don't. He does a great job with what resources he has. The equipment is old. It's well past its life expectancy, but bunny issues. Guido hasn't fertilized the course in over 4 years when it used to be done twice a year. Now, anybody who has a lawn knows that you want to fertilize that lawn probably a few times a year. So here you've got this $1 million asset out there and you're not fertilizing it. It's no wonder that the course doesn't look as good as it should. There's no nursery if you had a nursery, which is a grass area that's basically another green that you can use to cut up and use that for sodding the rest of the green, we wouldn't have had a winter kill problem, but that takes money. But it is something that every golf course, most golf courses have, overwhelming majority have. We don't have a maintenance plan. We have no budget. We need a mechanic, and we need to pay this guy. Next one. Develop a plan, develop maintenance, develop a nursery, pay competitive rates, pretty obvious. The irrigation, again, we had a specialist come in, and he has a lot of nice photos and a lot of details in his report. But the bottom line is that the current irrigation system is well past its life expectancy and ultimately needs to be replaced sooner than later. The software is outdated. That is something that could be fixed relatively inexpensively. It's got a lot of head failures. The biggest issue is where you're getting your water. Paying $160,000 a year is just ridiculous. Using potable water is kind of ridiculous. Next one. A new irrigation system, though, is expensive. It costs probably around $1.5 million. You don't want to spend that money unless you're doing a big overhaul to the whole golf course. Because at this point, because you're not spending enough in equipment failures to justify $1.5 million. You know, you have to take like 600 years to pay that off based on what you'd be saving on the current level of the problems. But if we renovate, and it also doesn't make sense to replace the irrigation system, which would require closing down the golf course and tearing it up to put in the new pipes and stuff. It doesn't make sense to do that if a few years down the road, you're going to tear up the whole golf course to renovate it, right? You want to do those two things at the same time. But we really think you should be looking at alternative water sources. The two sources you could get would be a well. And well might cost you as much as $1 million because you don't just need the well. You need an irrigation retention pond to store the water, and you need pumps, right? So those two things are going to be about $500,000. But even if you spend $1 million on the well, at $155,000 a year, you pay for it in, about 7 years. So it just makes sense. The second thing would be to do the river. You've got the water rights to the river. The river is about a quarter to a half mile, depending on which way you want the piping. And I suspect when you get into it, that may actually be cheaper than a well. But you need to talk to a geologist to see, and welling specialists to see how much a well would cost, how far down you have to drill it. Because obviously piping is expensive, so we want to do that with care. All right, I did some projections. I created 2 scenarios. One is status quo, basically, if you did nothing, this is what would happen. And then the other one would be if you followed some of the recommendations, most of the recommendations I put into this study, what would happen? Okay. Status quo assumes no changes, no capital improvements. The with improvements scenario says we do adopt the operational changes that I recommended, plus some capital improvements, probably about $250,000 worth. Should include expanding the bar, adding a service window from the kitchen to the bar, adding a bath and wash area to the maintenance room, new floor tees, fixing the walk-in freezer. And of course, opening the grill. So when we looked at the status quo, we see over a 5-year period, we'd be generating about 1.5, almost $1.6 million in revenue. I put in my projections to what 2023 will probably end up with. These were done in July, so you can, at the end of the year, you can look this back and say, oh, he didn't know what he was talking about, or, oh my God, he was right. Next one. The revenue, go back, I'm sorry. I should have pointed out. The rounds are going to start shrinking because the course is going to continue to deteriorate. So you're going to get less and less public play, you're getting fewer now, and your members are going to start aging out. So you don't have any new members, so that revenue starts declining. So your income decreases from 318 to 275. Okay. On expenses, I used your current cost of sales figures, except for food. I think I adopted a more realistic number on your food sales. So your gross profit is, over the course of the 5 years, 1.2 million. Expenses, I just basically used the expenses that you're doing and continuing it out. But then, when you look at the NOI and you say, oh my gosh, we had $84,000 to spend, by the end of 2025, we'd be out. So you're going to end up doing more expense cutting, which is going to result in an even greater drop in revenue. So that shows it. So the bottom line is, over 5 years, I expect a net loss of $325,000 if we do nothing. Next. With improvements, obviously, I expect a difference. The rounds, I think, can go from 8,000 to 12,000. And honestly, folks, I think that's conservative. Because if you remember that, that's just right at what the local area was expected to generate. And we've got the region, we've got more tourists and all of that stuff. So I think that's a conservative estimate. I expect the income to more than double from 318 to 700,000 because we're adding the grill, which is going to add a lot of revenue. Okay, next one. The cost of sales I used didn't go all the way down to industry averages, but I used kind of a more modest cost of sales figure. Expenses, of course, are going to go way up because we're adding more staff, we're adding more hours, and we're adding the grill operation. So our expenses end up with 2.4 million over the 5-year period. But the bottom line is that over the 5-year period, instead of losing $300,000, I think you will make $70,000. May not sound like a lot, but that's way better than losing $324,000. And it's going to create momentum, and it's just going to get better and better as time goes on. The next. But, here's where I get excited, is that even with those projections and even what I'm saying, I'm basically assuming that the existing golf operation is improved, but not changed, right? We're adding a grill, but we're not really doing much else. But there are things that we can do that will really help us add more. One, adding the forward tees will allow us to attract more women, right? So, the course becomes playable for women, so it makes it more enjoyable. But a driving range, folks, will have a huge impact. Not only does it attract more golfers, because golfers like to, practice and, things like that. But the most important thing is it gives you a chance to develop golfers. Instead of waiting for the market to just disappear through attrition, why not create a market? Have junior clinics, have clinics for beginners, have clinics for women, have clinics for seniors. Build your market. You also attract better golfers. Now, and we'll talk about, we could use, there's enough land actually that the city owns around there to put in a driving range. But we would need to do a complete renovation to the entire facility called rerouting. It may need a new clubhouse. And if we build a new clubhouse, we use the existing clubhouse as a banquet center, which I think would do fantastic. Next. We can add alternative revenue streams, not just the grill, but simulators. This is a big market now for simulators. These are, think video games, but when you've got a big screens, like, you're hitting into this net. And this allows you to generate golf revenue year round. You can have a foot of snow on the ground, but the simulators are working. You can still play around the golf at Pebble Beach, wherever you want. And they're not that expensive. We've got disc golf, we've got foot golf. These can be revenue sources too. Then we can think about changing the mission. I keep hammering about tourists. Right now you're an amenity. But I see, and this is what gets me excited about this place. I look at what's going on around this town and what you guys have already done for tourists, right? That's our direction, that's where we're going. Right now, we're not even in a tourist amenity. A tourist amenity is a place that tourists who are already here will go to entertain themselves. And that may allow them to extend their stay. We can improve the course so it becomes more of a tourist amenity, which will strengthen the economy. But here's the thing. We could expand this course and make it into a tourist attraction. We can create with that site, or in Cougar Canyon. It would actually be cheaper to renovate Cougar Canyon than it would be to build 9 new holes out here. But with the Jack Nicklaus Golf Course, or you take that site and make it into an 18-hole course, we have the potential of creating a tourist attraction, folks. That's where we're bringing people here to this town for one reason, to play golf. And once they're here, they're going to discover this town, and they're going to want to come back and come back and come back. That's what I see as the potential for this thing. So I have already given a proposal to Steve on doing a feasibility for what it would cost to do these things. And we can look at different options. Just adding a range, or adding a range and expanding 18 holes, or keeping this course the same and renovating Cougar Canyon. But I really want to encourage you guys to do that, because I can, my gut tells me, and I've got an ample source here to work from, that this course can really help spur even more economic development in this thing. Because and when we do the study, we would look at the economic impact, not just from a golf perspective, but what it would impact the entire area in terms of economic impact. Because it has, you're bringing more people here, that makes more money, they're spending, a few $100s a day while they're here, the impact carries forward. So anyway, next slide. So thank you. Any questions that you have for me?
Let's go and get questions.
Thank you for your time today. You talked about cities' responsibilities and you did an overall assessment. Do you have a projected financial evaluation of what it would cost the city in terms of, you said, cameras and repairs and things like that?
Depending on how much you do, it could be, if you just fix the bare minimum,
Right.
you're probably looking at $150,000 to $200,000. If you spent $500,000, you could make noticeable improvements that would impact performance. The things that you gotta fix, you gotta fix. You gotta bring in you gotta give them a washroom and a bathroom. That's not going to create more revenue, but it can keep your staff and it keep you in compliance with the law. Fixing the window in the clubhouse is not going to generate a lot of revenue for you, but it sure improves the aesthetics of the thing, and it tells the golfers that you care about them. Because right now, they're getting a very clear message that you don't. There is the impact that you can have that is measurable, then there's the impact that's very hard to measure, and that's, improving the ambiance of the psychological impact of making these repairs will be to morale of the staff and to customers coming in, et cetera, et cetera. But if I were to pick a number, I'd say if you could spend $500,000, you could make a noticeable impact. But that would not get us to the attraction. That's going to be millions of dollars.
We're not talking luxuries, we're talking city's responsibilities.
Well, I'm talking about whether the minimum that you can spend to make the course more playable is probably in that $250,000 to $500,000 range. But that's not going to have a dramatic improvement to performance. For that, you
Right.
need to go
Sure.
to the next level, which would be improving the physical golf course, the layout, and add a driving range and things like that. But that steps you from, several hundred thousand to, in millions, but I can't give you that until we do a feasibility.
That's what I was just gonna ask you. That's part of the feasibility.
We'll give you very good numbers on it.
Good. There's a lot of information you gave us, so are we gonna be able to get that information?
Yes.
Mayor and Council, yeah, we have a draft report already that John's been
Okay.
working on. I wanted to get your feedback, so we can incorporate that into the final report, but absolutely, we will get a full-fledged report.
It's an easy read, it's only, I think, 120 pages.
That's a lot.
Thank you.
I told you I went overboard on this thing, and it became a passion project for me. I don't write 120-page reports for anybody, but I just fell in love with the sound. I can't say anymore, and I just see so much potential with this golf course that if you could see, I'll give you one example. You've got this gorge in the middle of the golf course. The golf course is U-shaped around this gorge, and that gorge is beautiful. And you used to have a suspension bridge that went across this gorge with R3 course. You're talking about a tourist attraction. If we, just think about that. If we brought back the course, we added a range, even as a 9-hole golf course, we could probably make it into a tourist attraction. Just from taking rerouting the course, bringing back the suspension bridge and doing some other things that take advantage of the fantastic scenery and what you already got there. We could do wonders for it.
Have you ever heard of the saying, champagne taste and beer money? I've got the taste, but, I understand that golf course is a huge asset to this community. And what encourages me, and probably the rest of the council going forward with this, is we saw what happened to Monument Lake when we got the right people together to manage that facility. It's improved immensely in 3 years. So I think it's something that council needs to talk about. I have a couple of ideas myself about what to do to improve it. First of all, we need lot lighting out there so people will know it's there,
Well, signage is a big thing. Again, I kind of skipped over a lot of things.
Okay, no,
But,
but,
for example, you can have the DOT put signs for the course on the freeway.
yes, those, they call them TODs, tourist oriented, yeah. So I'd really like to get into the meat of your, and because I had a hard time looking at some of your figures from here, but I'd like to look at it, and I think it's something the council needs to discuss further.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think so too.
Yeah, there's a lot of things there, like you talked about the water irrigation. We've already kind of looked into that by running from the river, which I think that would be a great idea. Plus put a nice pond out there. And, the time, I think the biggest issue here is we want to do things, but we may have to do them at a time, year, it's kind of tough to just jump in everything. And I think the most important things are the restaurant, the grill, all that stuff there to get started. And then the water, I think, is a really big issue. If we can get that done, I think that'd make a big difference.
The only thing I would say on this is I'm going to strongly encourage the feasibility study, because if you need to have the vision of where you're going to go. Otherwise, you run the risk of spending the same money twice.
Right.
For example, where do we want to bring, if we're bringing it from the river, if that land down there is city property, that's a potential for a 9-hole course. The other 9 holes. That's one of the 3 places that we could put it. Good. Oh, you already took it off.
Yeah.
Can you bring that back up for just a second? There are 3 potential areas for the 9 hole. Go to the next slide. Do one more slide. You can't afford good help these days. All right, there are three areas of potential. This land's already owned by the city, and it would be fantastic from the standpoint, you got great visibility from the freeway, because you can't see the golf course from the freeway. We could put a billboard up to help that visibility up, but, you know, this would be easily visible, that would be a benefit. You know, we've already got a bridge across that we can use, widen that bridge to put the carts in. We've got this land here that we'd have to acquire. That would be another logical place to go. We could even look at this area over here. So you got three potential areas to look for. But that's where the feasibility analysis comes in, as to determining what would be the best way to go about it, what the costs would be for each one of those things. But, you know, when you look at driving range, if we're just looking at driving range, we've got this land here, we've got over here. But to do those things, we would need to reconfigure the golf course, probably need to put in a new clubhouse either here or buy out this guy. So, you know, it's not a simple thing, is what I'm saying. But there are solutions available, but that's where, you know, it's well beyond the course of this study to do that.
What is this feasibility study supposed to happen?
Well, so that would be the next phase should the council wish to move forward with it. So this was just a preliminary overview study and then a full
Yeah,
feasibility study.
this felt like a feasibility study. That's a lot of information. I guess if we were not to run with you, we still have to get like things ADA compliant and board situated and things like that. Just
Yeah, when we do, we take everything, you'd be in compliance with everything.
just to get along with
So, thank you for all the time that you've put into this. Obviously, that is a lot of information. I think it's important that the low-hanging fruit that we can address as quickly as possible. I think broken window, eye wash station, that really needs to be done for worker safety and just showing that we care about the place. I mean, some of that's pretty low-hanging fruit and easy to accomplish. I think we should take care of that. I had a question. You have the two projections, one with no changes, everything status quo, and the other, you know, with the investments that you talked about. In the course of doing these studies for multiple courses, is it possible to see any proof of track record for these projections?
Well, not, unfortunately, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink it. I have no control over the cities following my recommendations.
Right.
I can quote one example where I did have control. And that was Indian Creek in Dallas, where, you know, I did this study like I did with you, and then they hired me to, you know, I brought in a management company, I wrote the contract for the management company, and then I basically did periodic checks to oversee them. When they hired me, the city was losing $750,000 a year on their golf operation. So you can see why, when they hired me, they were thinking, well, do we close the course? It was a 36-hole facility. Do we close 18 holes? Do we close the whole thing down? Yeah, we can't afford to continue operating. We had just spent $3.5 million on renovating one of the courses. You know, help. The last thing they would have done when I came into them would be, say, spend more money. They would have ridden me out on town with, you know, tar and feathers. But after I went through this type of analysis and showed them where the problems lay, they agreed to invest another $500,000 and bring in new management, just like we're recommending here. End result, in two years' time, they went from losing $750,000 a year to making $250,000 a year.
Wow.
So that's $1 million turnaround in a 2-year period of time. And that's the one that I do have a track record of because they did follow all my recommendations. But, you know, and unfortunately, I don't get great follow-up from a lot of my work, but I think, you know, when you look at my website, I list every single course I've ever worked on, and I do that because I'm proud of them, and I don't know of any one of them that'll give me a bad reference. Now, it's 30-year career, so a lot of them don't even remember who the hell is he. And a lot of them were done under a different name. I was with National Golf Foundation, so a lot of them were done under that, so they wouldn't know my company. They'd know the NGO.
That answers that question. I appreciate it. The last question I have is you did say that you passed on the subsequent study costs to Mr. Ruger?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's all my questions there.
It comes in, I think, just under $1 million.
You know, as I was listening, I have 2 pages here of some of the information.
Aaron Ogilvy.
Ms. Ogilvy, do you have any questions?
I did want to jump in here if I could. Thank you. I'm sorry I missed the very beginning of the meeting. Very good presentation. Really exactly what I was thinking we were going to hear when an outsider came in and looked at it. I'm really glad to hear that the association was very forthright with you and helpful to you, and that's really good. I think I'm leaning on this like Councilwoman Griego said. I think we need to really think very hard about the city and whether or not the city has capacity to take something like this on. And I think my initial gut reaction is that I can see this working a lot better in the model of the Monument Lake situation that we have a professional management company who is operating that amenity on behalf of the city and doing a spectacular job because they have a profit interest in it and are doing it on behalf of their own name as well. And so I'd really like to see if we could find, probably that's where I would lean, is looking for a management company to come in and do something like that and partner with them in terms of a long-term plan for improving it and make it really spectacular to the city. Thoughts?
You know, I've got 2 pages of notes here.
About 120 pages, so
Well, I say a 120-page report is probably less than some of the other reports that we get periodically, so it's not so bad. I see there's a tremendous amount of concerns from the city side and the TGA side. What I'm seeing is that the more oversight needs to be had.
Yes.
Maintenance issues, accounting issues.
Speaking of oversight, I have one point on one thing.
Okay.
The TGA has one slot for the city on the board of directors. To my knowledge, the city has not exercised the right to have representation on that board for decades. So that would be, an obvious step would be to take advantage of that membership.
Yeah. You know, the feasibility study, I think that's something that's the next step here is what we were doing. And depending on what that cost would be, would you have any idea what that feasibility cost might be? Somewhere, give me a range.
50,000, I think, was the.
Yeah, there we have a proposal.
Okay. Here's my recommendation on a feasibility study. The TGA has, they're part of this. And I think maybe a split cost between that. They've got that $90,000 available. Why don't we maybe split that cost? That way it gives them some input on this and what. I really believe that maybe that could be something that maybe we should try to consider. I like that model that you were talking about, Ms. Ogletree was talking about, maybe a management company. What we've done with, just to let you know, what we've done with the Monument Lake is we brought on a management company. And each year we put in a substantial amount of money each year for renovations. And this is going to be a long-term project. It's not going to be a 1 or 2 year project. It's, step 1, step 2. And so I think maybe look at it maybe like a 5-year projection plan to see what we can do with it. If we could find that company to come in and look at the overall project. and come up with something. The biggest concern that we have right now going into this 2020 or 2024 budget, that's gonna be something that I've already talked to our city manager on. And, we've gotta look at that, we're gonna be looking at pretty hard this year, it's gonna be, anyway, there's some issues that we've gotta look at. One of the things that you mentioned something that we need to replace the carts.
They're 13 years old, yes.
Something's wrong there. There's something wrong there
Yeah,
because
we just did that.
we
Well,
don't have,
let me explain. You bought them less than 13 years ago, but they were used. So the carts
okay.
themselves are 13 years old. You bought them, I think, in
2018.
2018.
yeah, but they were old at that time. So they were 2010 models that you bought.
And I remember discussing that, and I don't remember
I don't even,
what.
I remember you and I talking about it, because we were gonna use the old ones for some other purpose, but
Okay.
how much does a new golf court cost? 'Cause I
Well,
think,
the recommendation would be to lease them, not buy them.
oh, okay,
That way you can rotate them. You know, most courses will buy them, lease them for a 4-year period and then rotate them out. And if you pay a little bit more, you can get a maintenance lease, which is what I recommend since you don't have a mechanic. So that way it's the car company's responsibility to maintain, not yours. You know, and you're probably looking at maybe $1,200 per cart per year. So if you've got 26 carts, you're looking at about $28,000 a year to maintain. You know, that covers their, you're rotating them every 4 years. And you've got new carts, not old ones.
And something else I was gonna mention, there was I'm not sure if he's still planning on doing this, but there was a gentleman that's really close to the golf course up there. And he is supposed to be building a building up there and supposed to have a simulator in there. That's what he talked about. Now, whether or not he still wants to move forward with that, I don't know. But that would be something that.
We've got room in the clubhouse to put simulators. And I would encourage that because you can buy simulators that are portable or can be collapsed down. So you can put them in the banquet room, and then when you have a wedding or something like that, you can collapse them down. And the price of these things come down. So, yeah, I would strongly encourage doing that as a good revenue source.
So, closing this portion out, consensus of council, you guys want to move forward with the feasibility study?
Yes.
yes, absolutely.
Ms. Ogletree, are you okay with the consensus of moving forward with the feasibility study?
Yes.
Okay. And I too, and I would encourage that you talk to the TGA to see, impress upon them that they're part of this. And I think that a joint participation and sharing the cost of this would be good. Okay? Mr. Wade, thank you for the presentation. I do appreciate all the information.
Thank you for the opportunity to join us. I love this project. I love this town. So.
Mr. Wade brought his wife here, who's in the front row.
I
shopped all day.
That's how much I love this thing. I had to show it off. So.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay, on to item number 2, which is our noise ordinance discussion. Mr. Ruder, what do you have?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is a conversation that has been brought up from time to time to look at what, maybe we'll just wait.
Yeah. No, I know.
What'd you think?
When you're stating.
I guess so.
Thank you, guys.
No one was here for the noise ordinance?
I know. So, Mayor, Council, this is an issue I think particularly Councilmember Williamson wanted us to have this discussion. It's really a discussion for you all to talk about how we want to move forward. But the one thing, well, there's a couple of things I want to highlight. With noise ordinances in any shape, there is an enforcement issue. It's very difficult sometimes if a motorcycle flies by someone's house for us to go cite them for violating our noise ordinance, because just not being able to catch them in the act. Fireworks are the other big thing. And we probably want to look at maybe a fireworks specific ordinance as well as part of noise. But I've gotten feedback from the community, and we hear this everywhere, of members who have PTSD, that type of thing. Those loud booms from the fireworks can be very disruptive to their lives and pets as well. The only thing that I just wanted to make sure that we're clear on, I would never recommend adopting any semblance of a noise ordinance. You might have seen them in other communities that would require us to purchase decibel meters and go measure the sound of a party at someone's house. Those are tremendously difficult to monitor and measure, and it may make it seem more scientific, but they always seem to take a little bit of the objectivity out of the process.
So you know that a few years ago, I thought we did do a noise ordinance. And I'm not sure what.
We talked about it.
Yeah, we do have a noise ordinance.
We do.
And I think maybe distribute that to council so that we can read up on it.
Yeah.
But you know, that is a problem. Matter of fact, while we were sitting here in that car or whatever, that was higher.
Yeah.
And we see that with motorcycles, we see that with cars. As a matter of fact, it's interesting, up where I live, Union Terrace, it hasn't happened the last week, but there for about 10 days or so, there was somebody, I don't know if they were going on the highway or what, but I could hear, I mean, they were just, the noise was ridiculous. And the other thing is some of these big trucks that come through town, they're using their Jake bringers.
Yeah.
And that's something that was passed by some areas in the state last year, prohibiting when they come through the
The
community.
thing is, we don't have garage inspections like we used to in the past.
Right.
You know, get away, if you were,
There's always
if you had a
a-
manifold, if your manifold was falling off, now it doesn't matter. And to enforce it, it's ridiculous unless there's like you said, a decibel meter or cameras. Same person going up and down Colorado all night within a certain, 30 minutes, that's ridiculous.
The problem, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, thank you. I was just gonna say, there are a lot of problems with it. And some years ago, we had the chief with, Charlie here, talking about that, because council at the time was wanting to talk about, enforcing this and doing this. So you think about it practically, like say a loud car goes down your street. So you have to get the license plate and the description of the vehicle. Then you call the cops, and then the cops, let's say, are gonna come out and say, okay, well, you got the description of the vehicle, so you say it was loud. How loud was it? And you say, really, really loud. And they say, well, when you say really, really loud, do you mean really, really, really loud? Right? And then prosecuting that is kind of a difficult thing. And they were back in the day talking about every police car having a decibel meter, and that seemed to be impractical also. But enforcement of that is just very difficult. Also, if law enforcement, and I really don't know how this would work, but if law enforcement contacted the offender and said, okay, get in your car, start your car, and let's see how loud your car is. I mean, I'm not sure they could even do that, but if they did, it doesn't necessarily mean that the car, how fast it was going or how it was revving, at what RPM it was going, when it went by. It would just be very hard to enforce, a loud car going by your house.
Well, it's not so much the loudness, it's the speeding. If you
Okay.
get a police officer and park him over there on Colorado Avenue,
Right.
Nevada, I'll guarantee you from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, they can write all the tickets they want.
Yeah.
And it's the same individuals, a white Mustang, a black Mustang,
Yes.
and a yellow Mustang.
Yes.
And they need to do something with that because sometimes they're gonna kill somebody.
Yeah, I think
That's
that's
ridiculous.
speaking from
Fair
experience.
enough, fair enough, right? And that's another conversation, right? I mean, this is a noise ordinance, but you're right. And I can remember going down San Juan and getting pulled over, right? Years and years ago, and I'm sure I was going too fast, but there was not much, I'm on the same side as the police department, but there hasn't been much speeding or traffic enforcement in Trinidad for many years. When
That's
speed
the
traps.
danger. And the noise because they're wrapping out their cars and streets
There's-
and running the stop signs.
Oh, I've
It's
heard
ridiculous.
people coming down some of these streets up on this end of town, coming down those hills.
Yeah,
That's what-
ma'am, what do you want to speak?
Yeah, I gave you the floor.
You did, I'm sorry, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. There, like, which one do you guys say? The Mustangs?
Yeah.
There's 3 of those little.
I believe the black and white and the yellow.
Yeah.
I've heard of it, no, just kidding, sorry.
They go up and down Commercial Street. And I think Frank is right. If we ask the police department to just look, even downtown, it's horrific. That is a trend right now. These kids are knocking out their
I know.
mufflers
Yeah.
just to hear the noise.
You're right.
You know,
Right.
just
Yeah,
straight
right.
pipes.
Yeah.
I used to think it was cute when I rode a motorcycle, but it's not so.
That's right. Now we get older.
No.
But Councilman DeBono was right, we used to have safety inspections that
Yes.
were required regularly.
Yeah, emission
Do that
control.
exactly,
Yeah.
right,
So let me
right.
ask you this, I know that they did away with that at the state level, but can a city do that themselves?
The regulatory, the regulations would be, like require all of our citizens to get an emissions inspection. That would be tough. And I don't know of any other municipality that does that, Mayor. It's a good thought, but I don't, do you know of anyone?
No, I was gonna ask you that, any other cities our size that
I
have.
know of people that have children that live in
Right, we're talking about
Trinidad,
safety inspection.
or parents that live in Trinidad, and the kids live in Denver, and they register their car in Trinidad, so they don't have to do the emissions control.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And also lower taxes, right,
Yes.
yeah. But.
Well, you're right, I think, noise ordinance is pretty hard to control.
It is,
The only
but
way you can catch it is if the policeman is standing there and they go by.
yes.
But if they cite those Mustangs a couple of times, they're gonna
Yeah,
think twice.
they're
It's money out of
That's
their
true.
pocket.
And fine them when they
Yeah.
come to municipal court.
Right. I'll prosecute anything, I'll prosecute anything. And we also have a fireworks ordinance. We have an ordinance on fireworks. We had one of those recently. We had a ticket for someone who lit off fireworks on the 5th of July. We didn't have any for the 4th of July. So I'm sure that means there were no violations of the law on the 4th of July. I'm kidding. I'm trying to be funny. Sorry. Yeah.
Don't quit your day job.
I know.
Mayor?
I
Can I jump,
Yes,
excuse me, make a jump in?
yes, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Yes, there's always going to be practical problems with having to try to enforce this ordinance. I think what I've heard from citizens of Trinidad, however, is that there's not much of an understanding among the citizens that we have one, and that one of the things that they thought would be helpful would be to have some signage around town, and particularly on some streets where it's been a problem that just says, notifies them, brings it to their attention, that area that we have a noise ordinance that prohibits loud and, whatever unreasonably interfere with sleep, comfort, repose of any individual. People should know that. And then the other thing I'm thinking is that perhaps another remedy for this would be if there was not an ordinance, but maybe our community had some kind of a mediation service that you could mediate between neighbors, because quite often it's neighbors who know who it is.
Yeah.
And they're, intimidated to talk to them, but maybe if there was some kind of mediation where they sat down and they helped them understand, I'm a vet, and this is causing me great distress, or this is causing great harm to my animals, that it might be something that would work to create greater sensitivity in the community about the issue.
I agree.
Yeah, I
Better
agree
not
with the signage for sure. Signage, just soft signage just saying, respect your neighbors and vets. Just something like that, if you had awareness. and have that on people's mind, just to say, you know, be aware of 4th of July, noise ordinance in place.
You know, as far as just enforcement, like I said, I think it's almost impossible to do.
It is.
And the only thing that we can try to do is to encourage our police department that if they hear somebody, you know, they try to catch them. I don't know if they would need decibel meters and they can find them that way. If they catch them as they go,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's one way.
Well, Mayor, and that's a good point. So I pulled up our ordinance here just so we can have it in front of us, and there's very specific things that it alludes to. I realized I've been violating D for a long time now, so I'll try to play my saxophone a little bit softer.
By the way, you were supposed to bring that today.
Oh, shoot. No, I missed the memo. But some ordinances for cities actually do put specific decibel levels. And I really caution against that because it's just so hard to get those meters. They're expensive and train our police department on how to use them. So I do like the suggestions, though, of maybe doing some outreach and informing people. Candidly, though, I don't think there's people that probably care.
So my question then is, okay, so we give somebody a ticket for violating the noise ordinance. How do we defend that?
How do we defend that?
Yeah.
You're giving
There's
them
nothing
a prosecutor?
specific, yeah.
Yeah.
For a ticket,
Right, well, it depends on how it's brought, but that's exactly what I'm saying.
yeah.
If you're, you know, a neighbor complains against a loud car, it is hard to prosecute
Okay.
that, you're right.
Or a super loud earthquake stereo in a car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you look at like letter A, the keeping in any buildings or upon any premise of any animal or bird which by frequent or long continued noise shall disrupt the comfort and repose of any person in the vicinity, that's really hard to make a judgment call.
Yeah, yeah.
Ducks are very quiet, just saying.
Well, like I said, I just don't know if there's anything that we can do with this.
So it occurs to me, I mean, we have the noise ordinance in place, and all of us would, I think, readily admit that PTSD, or not, the time around 4th of July
Yes, for
and even New Year now, it seems, is horrific. I mean, and you guys are gonna have to trust me on this, but we were at my father-in-law's after the 4th of July, and we found the remnants of a 300 or 30 caliber round. I don't know what it was, 308, 30-06, I don't know, but it was definitely 30 caliber that had presumably gone straight up and come straight down, or ish, some, you know. But my point is the amount of firearms that people are discharging, mortar rounds that people are discharging, has sort of been progressively more and more. I think that we really ought to look, if you go down all the way down to the very bottom, and what is it, 16.68, $300. Certainly, to Frank's point, we can catch somebody lighting off fireworks. We can catch someone blowing people's eardrums out with their car. If we change that to a much more onerous fee, maybe people would be less inclined to get caught. So, sure, you shoot off fireworks. To my knowledge, was anybody cited during this 4th of July?
No.
The thing about it is that fee structure that's available, can we increase the?
Yeah, that's the question I was going to
Because
ask.
I know that there are fee structures that we adopted a while back, and I don't know if that's.
But, well, the other part, Mayor, and then I'll be done if you don't mind. If we can't increase the fee structure, we need to focus on at least finding somebody, because people right now are doing it with impunity.
Right.
I mean, for 4 nights this year, at 4th of July, I slept like garbage. I mean, how is it that we let a very few minority of people keep everybody awake? I mean, now it happens till 2 in the morning.
Right. So, I don't mean to interrupt, but I would just say.
You weren't interrupting, I was done.
Okay, good. So, the practical aspect of enforcement is difficult. Right, and I would just ask you to think about what that looks like. So it would be after 9 PM, and you would have officers in a neighborhood. I think they would, they would decide on a neighborhood randomly, and they would go and they would wait for people to light off. It's dark, so it might be, 8 houses down, but they would wait for people to light off fireworks, and then they would go there and issue them a citation. And you'd have to have officers assigned and designated and do that. And I think that would probably be something that Steve would have to talk to, then the new police chief about and say, I want you to do this. And you could have code enforcement go down.
I get that it'd be difficult, and I want to be very clear, I'm not being critical of the PD. It's super difficult, but I think it's super difficult, but I think it's also super necessary. I mean,
I talked with Chief Glorioso about this last 4th of July, and he informed me that their practice is there's obvious houses where they're just shooting off shells left and right, and those are easy for them to fund. So they will go and tell them to knock it off, and if they have to come back, then they issue the citation.
I think skip the warning part.
Yeah, maybe that's the better approach.
And also, I don't want to be a rat, but there were 0 tickets for the 4th of July.
I was just about to say that.
0.
Well, the other thing too is that, like with vehicles, having a lot of, noise, like you guys were talking about those 3 vehicles, the red, white, blue, or whatever they are, is that I think maybe the BD maybe needs to get a little stricter on enforcing speeding tickets. I think that once you do that, that may calm some of this down too. Because then they don't have that distance to say, I'm gonna travel
Can wrap it
from
up.
here to there, and giving it all they could.
Right. Kind of 2 separate conversations, but understood. And I will tell you, I think, like maybe not all, but a lot of the police cars are equipped with very expensive radar that has to be calibrated daily. I mean, at least if they're doing, speeding enforcement, it has to be done daily. And I prosecute tickets for nothing more than a seatbelt violation. They'll pull people over for other reasons, and I did a trial the other day on a seatbelt ticket. I'm 62, I could die at any moment, and that is what I was doing.
What I was saying is,
these are your life choices, Larry.
Yeah, they are. I'm not blaming anyone but myself. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Is it not true though, however, that just lighting off fireworks alone is a violation, but not even considering the noise?
That's
Why are we not having any tickets for anybody doing anything?
Exactly, especially exploding fireworks, that's correct.
Right. Right, why are we not having any ticket? Forget the noise, that's against the law, it's against our ordinances.
That's right.
And I don't know whether it's legal in the state of Colorado, I'm not sure, but it always strikes me as odd because I'm like, aren't they prohibited when I'm listening? No, they just, it should be only the public display that's at the park that's happening.
Yeah, you're right, you're absolutely
Yeah,
right.
let me give you, because it just went by, somebody just went by just now.
Yeah.
And I'll bet that they started probably right at the corner over here,
Yeah.
and then they give it everything they have,
Yeah.
and that creates a noise. So if they get caught, that's what I'm saying, is that maybe they have to be fined. So I think it's just, the little enforcement that we can provide, I think that's the best we can.
I have to preface my remarks by I'm not criticizing the police department.
Right.
But you look at the amount of fines that we're getting in muni court. I mean, we're getting no fines, and it's not about the money. It just it says that the tickets aren't being issued out there, and I think this is probably going to be a really good time with a new chief coming in to kind of let he or she know what this council expects from the police department. For instance, in the business that I'm in, there have been accidents where the one party was really, negligent, and there were no tickets issued.
Yeah.
And so, to Aaron's comment, if there's no penalty, nobody tries to do better. And I think it's something we need as a council maybe to express to the new administration coming in at the police department. We don't want to be tough, but we want,
Right.
we want some semblance of law and order.
You bet. And that, of course, comes from this guy.
No, absolutely.
But I think it might help. Whatever you think.
I do think we want to be tough. I do think that.
Yes.
And I don't want to break protocol in terms of Steve instructing his employees, but it might be good for you to have a conversation with the new chief about
Yes.
how you want to see traffic enforcement, firework enforcement.
I have a question. Is it possible? I guess I'm sure the chief can do that, but is it possible to remove the police officers, their own interpretation of that? Like tell them there will not be a visit the known houses that you said, and give them warning. You visit that house, find them in the act, and cite them. Is that possible?
We always want officers to be able to use their discretion.
Yeah.
We might be able to say, that we want you to try to get away from giving warnings and just write a citation to let people know that we're serious about this. Part of the problem is, and I'm sorry, I know I keep saying the problem, but I think that the first argument we're going to have is selective prosecution. Why did you write me a ticket when it's been going off for forever? That's probably one of the reasons why they were doing warnings first and then going back. But yeah, I think the point can be made that, and talk about, warning, like signage saying don't speed or don't be loud, maybe also signage, and letting people know we're going to enforce fireworks laws for big honking fireworks.
Couldn't we, New Year's is coming up, couldn't we have a campaign on Facebook, send it out in our water bill? Listen, starting this year, noise ordinance, fireworks particularly, will be enforced.
And I'm going to say this again, sorry. The problem with that is, on New Year's, there's DUIs, there are DUIs probably everywhere, drunken, disorderly bar brawls.
Can we deputize random individuals to prosecute?
I know you want that duty.
I never said that. Let's go and wrap this portion up, and it boils down to that the enforcement is going to be the most difficult.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe now that we have a new chief coming up, like Ms. Grego was saying, let's have a conversation with the new chief to say, these are our expectations,
Yes.
from council for stricter enforcement. I'm not sure what else we could really say other than that, but it's pretty hard to control all this stuff because you hear one pop here and then all of a sudden there's 20 pops going on over here. So anyway, I think that's probably the best that we can do. The current ordinance that we have, it's difficult to control. Okay. All right, let's go on to the next item. Item 3, fencing around commercial businesses.
It's the same.
Okay.
And I've mentioned this to Mr. Ruger, and you've mentioned it as well. I've had discussions that there are some businesses around that have these automobile on-the-street shops. There's one going on right now. I think it's on Nevada or someplace.
Yes.
There's a guy that has 3, 4, 5 cars up there, and it's right on the street. There's other areas that I think that they need to be fenced off because it's
I had somebody
a nice one.
I had somebody come to me about that individual on Nevada. And he is actually operating a car repair shop out of his house. And when she calls the police department to go talk to him, he said, no, he's just doing it for his friends. But I go by, every time I go by there, there's different. There's all kinds.
Mustang up there with
But
Yeah, have the muffler removed. Yeah, right.
So, I'm very frustrated because we're doing better, but we're a little rough around the edges, you know what I mean? Like, there's buildings on Main Street that have boarded up windows, and I understand it's very expensive to replace glass, but the pride, I guess we can't legislate pride of ownership, but it's a bad reflection on the whole community.
Yeah.
And I just, as a council person, I'm frustrated because I don't know how to make it better. And I guess that's when I'm bringing that up. Like the auto body shops that have all these junk vehicles right in downtown Trinidad. Why can't they do a privacy fence where you can put something on their chain link where people don't have to see that, you know?
So, if I could please, we write people tickets for accumulation of junk. Now, that's usually private homeowners who have, you know, like an old hot water heater and a bunch of stuff out. We don't normally, don't very often write, you know, tickets to places that are, let's say, marginally a commercial operation. But I would like to say, we had somebody, I think Audra will probably know what I'm referring to, but somebody who was hyper-focused on what appeared to be a commercial trucking operation in their neighborhood, and they were like taking pictures and gathering evidence. And I think we were able to put, I don't know what the outcome of that was, but we were able to accumulate, enough evidence that they were indeed having a commercial operation in a residential area, which of course is a zoning violation, and we can enforce that kind of thing. So there are things we do, and what we can also do is say, we're going to prosecute you, we're going to do these things, but in the alternative, you could construct a privacy fence to keep that. So there is stuff we can do. It's just that we're not really inclined to write citations for whatever reason to what appear to be somewhat commercial operations.
Well, I think what we do there is that, we give them a warning with a time frame to do something. Because, sometimes it depends how big of a fence that they would need to do, whether it's,
Right.
Maybe, if it's a small area, maybe 30 days, if it's a large area, maybe give them 60 days, or whatever it might be.
Right.
Something to give them some time to get in compliance. Because, here's what we're trying to do, we're trying to beautify our community.
Right.
And then we have those few people that are just destroying the beauty of the community. So we need to try to figure out a way to, at least get them to help.
What's the restrictions on the Frontier Hotel? Accumulation of stuff outside, bathtubs sitting right there, and people are driving by.
That's bad.
I cringe when I
We
go
ought to
in there.
bring that to the officer's attention, we can do that.
Yeah, I will do that.
Okay, thank you.
It's not a good exit.
But I haven't driven in either of them.
And you should go on the North Avenue side if you want to see something.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
So as far as the fencing type thing, I think that we, I think we need to look at that a little deeper.
And,
Ms. Ogletree, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I'm wondering if this isn't like prompting us to think more about beautification through a zoning code amendment or a rework, because we don't have a lot in our zoning code that's about the obligation that people have to keep their property looking good, whether commercial or residential. And it's something that I think that would really help if it was an understood standard that we had.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that? I just think that we need to get something done with that.
Yeah.
There's a few around town that are just really destroying the,
Yeah.
you may live in an area, and your place might be kept nice, but 2 houses down the way is a junkyard.
You may want to give us a couple of addresses, right? And just, we don't want to be selective. We don't want to be accused of selective law enforcement, but just a couple of addresses that you can think of, give them to us if you were police in private. And we can look at them and we can have, code enforcement officers maybe go by and.
If you talk to Rick,
Yeah, absolutely.
you talk to the code officer, he'll do it. I've done it 3 or 4 times, gave him addresses, and he's taken care of it. So
Good,
all you have to do is tell him, and he'll take care of it.
okay, good.
And he's done a really good job on those 3 or 4 places I
Nice.
mentioned to him.
Residential or commercial?
Residential.
Residential, okay, good. It would be nice if we could get some now for commercial.
Yeah, I
I
was
think,
gonna say that, now it's commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fencing around commercial businesses
Yeah.
sounds to me like, no, I'm just kidding, like commercial. But we'll do that. We'll see what we can do for commercial.
Yeah, so you got both.
Is there something in the works with the Frontier Motel?
Supposedly,
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're supposed to get the.
Couldn't happen. Nothing like welcome to Trinidad.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
there now.
okay, any other?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the next steps we're taking with the noise ordinance, I just wanted to have a clear understanding of that.
So from what I'm taking back is we want to have conversations with our next police chief about not only our ideas and what the council's direction is, but also their ideas on how we can better enforce that as well. In the meantime, though, I will talk with Acting Chief Tahanovich and let him know that it's a council priority to really crack down on not only the noise issues, but patrol in general, and let him know that we would like to see more of that and get some feedback from him as well.
Ms. Ogletree, do you have any final comments?
Not about that issue.
Okay. All right, well, anything else for future work sessions?
No, I mean, I would like to, this coincides with the police chief too, but, really, why are we striping streets? Nobody pays attention to it. You got double yellow stripes, these people make U-turns in the main street, they do it all over. And we need to have a policeman check this out because it's ridiculous. I mean, they just turn wherever they want, and I don't know where they're at on patrol, but if we have 6 guys out there patrolling, somebody needs to go through town once in a while and check that.
Patrol.
I mean, I'm not picking on it,
Those
but,
are 2 things I'm.
a really good example here, a few weeks ago, they had seatbelt checking.
Right.
I got stopped twice by the sheriff's department just to check if I had a seatbelt. I've never seen a police officer stop anybody and check for seatbelts, but the sheriff's department is doing it. How come they're doing it and we're not doing it?
Any other thoughts for future
You know
work
what
sessions?
I'd like to talk about too is the parking downtown. Is there any way we could line specific parking spaces downtown? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that aren't parking correctly.
It is a priority for us, and we can definitely have a conversation about that. But the short answer is that's something.
I thought that was something that we were gonna be doing, because, I brought that up some time back, and I thought that we were going to have some striping for parking spaces.
Yeah, that's the goal. We don't know what to stripe them because we're waiting for our Main Street consultant to give us their report on parking. And then also we want to tie in the area-wide planning efforts that we've been doing as well. So it's unfortunately, it's not as simple as just going and painting the lines. We want to identify where the handicap spots would be, that type of thing. So, but we can definitely talk about that in the future.
Nothing comes easy, does it?
It doesn't.
Right.
Anything else?
I don't know if it's a work session or what, but I'd really like if we can have an inventory report, something. A lot of the parks around town are just really needing some attention. And health safety concerns too. Aside, I'll tell you after something really concerns.
Parks and Recs are getting a list of parks right now as we speak, glad you brought that up. From the worst parks to the best parks, and some of the parks aren't being used that good as a city, so.
Something that I noticed last Friday, several of us went to Pueblo, and we had that little tour around the big Pueblo at their Riverwalk area. And Mayor Gladysar was sitting next to me, and he was saying that they have very little problems down there. And one thing I noticed is that the trees are like our Riverwalk. There's tree after tree after tree.
their area, there's a tree here, and there's a tree maybe 30, 40 feet away, so they really opened it up. So that's one of the concerns that I know that a lot of people have with walking the trail, but then again, the tree board gets into it, and I'm not sure what kind of issue they would have with that, but cleaning out a lot of that rubbish and stuff, I think might help make people feel more comfortable. Anything else?
I think we've complained enough.
Your ducks don't need to go in for a while.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
5:21, we conclude the, today's work session. Thank you, guys. All right.
Thank you.
Wrap up this weekend.
Right.
Yeah.